This is Analog Spectrum. They settled on Analog Spectrum as their name because all the kick-ass names were taken.
We're back.
Hello, everyone. This is Analog Spectrum. Tony speaking to you, and I'm here with Doug.
Yes, I'm here as well.
And for those that are not aware, we did a long day of recording, and this is our last topic.
Yes, long day of recording and eating brisket.
We ate brisket, so this is still a brisket day.
Yeah.
So in Texas, brisket day is actually is a state holiday.
It's a state holiday.
Man, that was a good brisket, man.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe we'll do a podcast someday on barbecue.
Yeah, could be. You're going to lead that one.
That's a good one. Yeah. So I smoked the brisket. So
yeah, barbecue in Texas is not like barbecue in the rest of the world.
It's got its own thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to see where this one goes. Again, like I mentioned on the last podcast, which I thought was a good one, but this one is, I don't think it's quite a hodgepodge, but I was just wondering.
It's unplanned.
Yeah, kind of unplanned. I mean, because I don't really know where I'm going to go with this, or we're going to go with this, because both of us, again, we're, in the last half of our lives. If you could go back in time, and let's say, you can't tell yourself invest in Microsoft or anything like that, but
right.
If you could give yourself advice, kind of unsolicited advice that you think you might follow, what advice do you think you might give yourself?
Invest in Microsoft.
Shit, no doubt. Well, it's hard. Okay, so one thing about that,
I'd say invest in Starbucks.
Starbucks, Microsoft, Apple, Casio. I don't know.
Apple.
So, but one thing about that, when you think about the only thing about making a whole boatload of money, which would be awesome, no doubt. I know they say money can't buy happiness. I don't know if I agree or not.
You can buy stuff to make you happy, though.
I think unhappiness comes in different flavors.
Yes.
So it probably depends on how mentally healthy you are.
Yes.
But the only issue is if I did suddenly have a bucket. Let's say I went back and gave myself advice and said, "Hey, invest in Apple," right?
Right.
It would definitely change my trajectory. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know you.
Completely. Yeah,
exactly. I would. And
that's kind of where I was going to go with this whole thing.
Yeah.
Is like I'm. To me, if you get to the root of the question is, what would you change about your life?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, quite honestly, I don't want to change much. I really don't. And it's because, I've had troubles. Whatever. We all go through that stuff.
Right.
But I kind of like the way things have worked out.
Well, yeah, same. I mean, God, I would never want to not know Melanie. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I feel, and it's funny because. People. It's always funny, and you probably can relate. I've had people say to me, "Man, you really can't pick him." I didn't pick her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she picked you,
or something. I got lucky.
I got
lucky.
Right.
So
I tell you what. In our case, I think Elzette really did pick me because, there was some.
What was she
weird
thinking?
stuff going on. I know.
Okay, what was going on?
She's not mentally stable. No. In my personal life, just I knew she was there, and I had a slight attraction to her, but she worked for me at the time, and I was like not going there.
Right.
So anyway, what the hell are we talking about this for? This is like giving yourself advice podcast, not life story podcast. Okay.
Well, anyway. But life stories are good.
Okay. Well, anyway,
go.
So she was attracted to me, and she she's very, very determined. She's very patient and all that stuff. So I was going through all kinds of other weird stuff when you and I were doing online dating.
That's
from afar. Yeah. Don't even go there.
No. Don't worry. I'm not going to say anything. But I do want to say stuff.
Yeah.
That
was a colorful time in our lives.
It was. But no, I like this. This is okay. And don't worry. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to. And honestly, nothing nefarious happened. Let's be clear.
No,
we didn't do anything weird.
But
both of us were kind of wrapped up
ridiculous
in that online
stuff.
But there was funny stuff. But it's kind of one of those things of where this podcast is going to have to go in a different direction. The world's going to have to change before we're going to start sharing those stories.
Yes.
But those are moments where, because I think both Doug and I have talked about, like, well, how did, and we may even talked about this in another podcast, but how did Doug doesn't have a lot of friends that he's been friends with as long as he's been friends with me,
right.
And vice versa.
Right.
What moments in our life have managed to allow us to kind of maintain that connection? And one of them was that he went through a divorce about the same time I went through a divorce, and he started online dating or dating again. I say online dating, but we both used online. Started dating again about the same time, and we met our current wives about the same time, and blah blah blah.
Right.
So there's all these moments.
There's like parallels.
Yeah, it's a lot of parallels. Yeah. But the online dating thing was so.
Yeah, there's some comical shit that
there
went on
was
through
some
that. We should have had a movie.
We should write a movie.
Yeah.
So,
I think Willem Dafoe is available for
oh
casting.
Lord, one of these days, I swear you need to shut up because I will tell that story.
Okay.
I will.
Moving
tell
on.
story.
Okay.
Yes.
Reset. Okay. So
that is such a bomb to drop on anybody that's listening right now. They're like,
you're just gonna have to wait.
Yes.
So reset. So advice to give your younger self.
Sure.
I was thinking about this, and outside of that typical stuff, like you're saying, invest here and whatever, become a millionaire. I think one of the things that I would probably I wouldn't deter myself from joining the Coast Guard.
Never.
I think I had a good time.
Mm-hmm.
There were some very, very challenging moments in that, but I think I like that. I like the challenging parts. But I guess the only thing that I would have done maybe a little bit differently from the Coast Guard perspective is I probably would have I would like to tell myself, don't be afraid to take more risks as a younger person in the Coast Guard. And I don't think I was risk adverse. What I think I was just stupid, blind, young teenager not knowing anything, So as an example, I can remember this pretty clearly. On the drive to the recruiter's office to go to boot camp, my dad drove me down there, and he said, "Oh, I've got 2 pieces of advice for you. First piece of advice is take any school they give you. Take any school. The military is going to teach you all kinds of stuff. Take every school." And I didn't do that. I turned down EMT school because I was afraid of like the blood and guts stuff. I don't really like it much anyways, but it was more like, I don't know, man. I don't want to blood and guts, but I also didn't want to be responsible for somebody else's life in that immediate, direct way. You know what I mean? And then the other piece of advice he gave me was learn to drink black coffee because you never know when you're going to run out of cream or sugar.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I, instead of doing all that, just became and got in the food service world, and y'all bastards might have ran out of cream and sugar, but I never ran out of cream and sugar.
Right.
I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
so but anyway, so that's the only advice I would give me, my own advice that my dad gave me, like actually leap forward a little bit and take some of those schools that you may or may not have thought that you were qualified for,
I it's interesting because, God, that actually adds a whole other layer because there's definitely advice that you could give yourself that could mess everything up. Like where I am now, I don't want to change because you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Like where I am right now in my life, I don't have.
Chick, we got it good.
Yeah, we got it okay.
You kidding me?
Yeah,
okay, shit, we got it made in the shade.
We got
dude.
it good. We got it good. I mean, could I have more? Of course, but I don't need more. You know, if I want something, I buy it. You know, so but it also, like they say, what is it? Luck is opportunity and preparation coming together. You know, so I feel like I've been good with that. You know,
yeah, absolutely.
So I think if I were to go back to my younger self, one thing I would say, and we actually talked a little bit about this in the last podcast, I would have told my younger self to not use tobacco. That would have been very, that would be very practical advice, but I should have never started to smoke or dip or anything like that. That was a mistake. And not that it did anything wrong or right or anything like that. I'm not going to lay that on myself, but that was something I wasted a lot of money at the very least.
Yes.
Maybe I would have told myself take things like exercise more seriously.
Yeah.
Okay. Only because that I think that would have benefited me in the long run.
I think that's funny because I realized this as I was giving myself advice 2 seconds ago before you started. Yeah. Is that it's funny because it's not like we hadn't heard these things.
No.
Right? Other people were telling us these things.
Right.
And so, what's the magic?
Well, I wonder if I knew it came from myself.
Yeah.
Like that would be the only way.
Yes,
that
exactly.
would be the only way.
Yeah, because you've heard it 50 million times, right?
And truthfully, who knows if it would have sunk?
Yeah.
Like if it would have made a difference.
I would have looked at myself like, oh Jesus, that old guy.
Yes.
I'm not listening to you. I'm gonna do it my way, so I can not turn out like that guy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and also I think that's advice that may or may not have, as long as hey, make sure you start exercising, and I get run over by a truck while I'm running down the road. Yeah, but let's assume that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I would have probably told myself that to have. But you mentioned when you're talking about take every course.
Yeah.
I remember being like as far as advancement in the military, like advancement tests. I remember avoiding them, just thinking, well, I don't think I really have the knowledge to take it.
Because you're competing against a lot of smart people, right?
That was stupid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, I should have studied just a little bit and taken the test. You know what I mean?
Instead of playing road rash with me.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And gone on to become a, because I studied 30 minutes a night or an hour a night, start to get, start dialing in with that kind of stuff. Take take responsibility for that kind of stuff.
Right.
And, but yeah, like you, I definitely joining the Coast Guard was the right decision.
Yeah. One of the things that if I could go all the way back, let's say till I was like 4 years old or something.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think this advice would go to me, but I think it would also, I would like to tell my parents this, and that is get me into playing a musical instrument now.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Because I will tell you that I was mentioning this to Elzette the other day. There really is there's two pursuits that I have that I can feel inside of me are pure joy. One of them is music, listening and playing, because I was a drummer for a while, and driving fast. Those are two things that I like. I like with no holds barred.
Right.
That is just pure fun for me. And of course, driving fast it's great when you're in a racetrack. When you're out here in public streets, it's obviously there's risk involved that are
and loss.
It's whatever. So, but playing music, I feel like in another world I should have been a music, not necessarily like a rock star for all the fame and all of that, but legitimately, honest to God, the creation of something that is gonna just live forever, like music or movie or whatever, write a book or whatever.
Right. Well, if you I think I think I talked about this. I don't know. Jesus, we're like at podcast 25 now. I know. I
forget what we talked about.
Some of this is going to be redundant. Also, and to be very clear, Doug and I talk a lot offline,
Yes. Yes.
So sometimes we tell stories to each other, and I can't remember if we've did it on a podcast or if it was just us talking. But I always had a craving to play an instrument. I think I still want to play. I still want to. There's a few things that I want to do. Ever since I finished the doctorate program, I'm busy. I felt like I would get done with that and life would get less busy, and it hasn't. And that bums me out because of certain things that I want to do. And one of them is I would like to learn how to play the guitar. When I was a kid, I remember going to my mom. God love her. I mean, Depression era person, and I went to her and I said, "Hey, Mom, I really, really want to learn how to play the guitar," and she bought me a clarinet. And you're like, flipping things, you know what I mean? And I think I like you. The idea of being famous, being a rock star, is not appealing to me at all. It's not. But being able to be creative is something that being creative across the board.
Yeah, sure.
Is something that.
This podcast even incorporates some of that.
100%.
Yeah,
1,000%. I mean, when I'm editing this and doing things and making things, it makes me happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, it's true.
I mean,
and that's kind of, we talk about movies a lot on this podcast. That's one of those things that I sort of informally seek out when I'm watching movies is, I get that vibe. Like, was this a piece of art that somebody actually designed and created?
Right. Or
like nowadays, was it some crappy piece of rehash shit that they just trying to sell tickets? Like, I don't like movies like that.
Right.
Which,
the whole Marvel phenomenon is lost to me now.
They just nuked that entire freaking Marvel universe.
It's a recipe.
Yes. Yeah, and it never should have been.
No.
Which I'm going to digress for a second, because what would be our podcast without this?
I'm totally. This is, out of all our podcasts, please digress in this one.
Okay,
So,
quick question for you, and this is going to put you on the spot because we have not talked about this before. Can you name a movie that you have seen and like immediately either you knew you wanted to see it again or you made like, this is it, I got to watch this movie again?
yeah.
What? Tell me one.
I can name a couple.
Go.
Aliens.
Okay.
I thought that was one that I immediately knew that I'd watch it again.
Watch it again, yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, okay. That's
Yes.
cool. See, I like that because that's like the first in the series. Like Aliens, you already had a little bit of history with the franchise, right?
Right.
Because you had seen the first one.
I could dissect why I think that one is.
Yeah. But Raiders of the Lost Ark, huh?
Yes.
So you knew you wanted to see it again?
Yeah, I was young.
Yeah.
I mean, recently, I hate to say it, I knew that I wanted to see Maverick again.
Okay.
And the reason why is I knew that I saw it and we're probably getting away from the point you were trying to make, but I saw it like in a draft house, and while it was good, I just knew that it would look better on like IMAX.
IMAX, okay. Mine was Saving Private Ryan.
Wow, yeah, I could go there.
And I will tell you that not only did I know, I literally went back the next day and watched it again, back to back.
Right.
It was that opening scene was literally a gut punch, man. It was so well made, and
You mean the beach scene?
the beach landing. Yep.
Okay.
All the way up to the point where he grabs Upham with the typewriter and takes off. I don't know what made me think of that, but we were talking about advice you give yourself and like creating and all of that sort of stuff, and I feel like that, and I didn't know this at the time, but what I felt like that this movie was legitimate.
It was powerful.
And it was powerful, but I felt like there was legitimacy to the movie that was not in many of the other films I had seen. And I come to find out afterwards that Ron Howard and Spielberg, they did a crap ton of research.
Was it Ron Howard or you mean Tom Hanks?
I think Ron Howard was in had produced Band of Brothers. Him and Spielberg, I think.
No, I think it was okay. Well, go ahead.
Okay,
I think it was Tom Hanks was your main player.
Well, no, Tom Hanks was in the movie.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look. But go ahead.
I thought Ron Howard and Spielberg actually put the movie together. I thought they were like the driving force behind the film. Whatever roles they ended up taking, director, producer, executive producer, whatever, I'm not sure.
Okay, go ahead.
But that's what I thought it
I have
was.
thoughts. Go
But
ahead.
Spielberg for sure.
Yeah. That was the Spielberg.
But I thought Ron Howard was involved. But anyway, so I found out later that those guys interviewed a ton of vets that were actually there.
Band of Brothers.
And that's where Band of Brothers came from, is because they felt like they didn't do that story justice when they told the story of Saving Private Ryan. There was a whole element of the 101st Airborne that they kept hearing all of this stuff during the research.
Yeah.
And then they ended up creating Band of Brothers. So that's a really diverse digression, I should say. But it's connected because to me, the whole point behind that is that it's a piece of artwork that was created that actually means something. It's valuable to the world.
Sure.
And to me, that's the ultimate.
Yeah,
I don't care if it's a song or a poem or a painting or whatever.
I just and we could definitely get off on Saving Private Ryan or movies like that. But I remember and it's weird. Definitely as I get older, I feel like I've become there is a self-reflection. Mm-hmm. I feel like I've become much more emotionally deep and also a little bit more labile and multifaceted. And what I mean by that is when I was younger, definitely, certain things would definitely have an emotional punch. Mm-hmm. But now me and Melanie will be sitting there watching YouTube videos and, somebody will like rescue a cat and I'm freaking crying my eyes out like a bitch. You know what I mean? But I remember like Saving Private Ryan. We talk about how that's definitely a work of art. I remember in that, and it punches me. It's a punch right now to me, like that. Even when I was like, when that movie came out, I was probably in my early 30s, and there was a scene where the priest comes to the house and the woman is there, and as she sees them pull up, she collapses, and there's no dialogue, right? No,
and that is amazing storytelling.
Oh my gosh, and as a 30-year-old or whatever who has does not wear his heart on his sleeve.
Yeah, I understand the gravity of that though.
My heart was in my throat. Yeah,
absolutely. That's one of my favorite scenes in movies.
Yeah, and also the end.
It was the U.S. military.
Yes.
vehicle
Yes.
that drove up the driveway
Yeah,
to the old farm out in the middle of Oklahoma or something.
The officer or whoever and the priest gets out, and she's just like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
And then at the end, like where, the Matt Damon character, of course, now he's in his 70s or 80s. Oh my gosh! When he goes up to the site to thank.
Yeah. And he asked his wife, "Did I deserve this, or was I good? Was I good? Whatever."
Wow! Even to think about it, and
dude, I got goosebumps right now.
Yeah, right now. Yeah,
it's fucking crazy, man.
But the thing about oh man, this is really a digression.
Yeah, it's okay. We changed the topic in the
that's fine.
mid-form.
That's fine. We'll maybe bring it back around.
Yeah,
we got time. But you talk about comparison of like the Marvel movies nowadays and the formulaic nature of those movies, and there's no wiggle room for mistake. They know what they need to make, and they need to move it forward. And I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but I get the idea that thing hits certain marks, and they're like, this has to happen, or we're this, it's all on a rail. Because like I said, I watched talk about aliens. I watched a documentary about how that movie was made, and it is amazing. And the movie looks amazing, right? I mean, but it's a miracle that it got done,
Right.
because of all the pushback that James Cameron got and so forth,
Right.
Bigelow and so forth. So but there's definitely in certain movies that I watch, there's like dedication to art, and it comes across and what I'm and Spielberg. It's funny because Raiders of the Lost Ark also a Spielberg movie and a Lucas movie, and to me, it's amazing filmmaking, right?
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, yeah. So filmmaking, I don't know. You just said a couple of things in there that always strike a chord with me. Like it's a work of art. Yeah, and I know I've been harping on that, but I mean, I want the average person to understand when somebody says a work of art. It doesn't mean, it's not that cheap meaning that some people to use, and then at the same time, it's not like this isn't, we're not dedicating this story to God like the popes and stuff of the past did to the Sistine Chapel, and when they're creating these works of art, statues and paintings or whatever, it's all in the service of Christ and all of that stuff. This is not that. This is really art for the sake of art, and it's really, to me, it's storytelling in just a form. It's one of the forms of storytelling, right? Movie making, and there's lots of elements that pile in to make it. But yeah, it's just no different than sitting down and hammering out a book. I mean, there's so many details that go into it, but you're doing it solo for the most part.
Well, you mentioned the podcast and how doing that is kind of my own. And again,
just form of creativity.
Yeah. I was going to say, and it sounds very, I don't know,
cliche or whatever, right?
Or like it's ego driven, or kind of that it is my way, our form of expression, which is important. But I watch YouTube videos, and those individuals, they. In our last podcast we were talking about Gone but Not Forgotten, and also things that are one of the things I'm thankful for is that there's an outlet for a very grassroots creativity, and things like YouTube and so forth, even TikTok, which I freaking wish would go away now. Yeah, but only because of what's behind it. But with that said, but
that's what makes it nefarious, right? Because it's attracting people to make this innocent, art,
right,
or whatever, and then it's using it against them.
Can
what I mean, or has the ability to use it against
definitely.
them. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, wow. So there you go.
So sorry, that was a Saving Private Ryan. I thought about it the other day and whatever.
It kind of opens up my brain. But like I was saying, when it comes to like giving advice to my younger self, you brought up a couple of interesting points. One, would I take it? Would I take
exactly.
That advice? Because but also I think about
there's a movie script in there somewhere.
Certainly,
a guy goes, hot tub time machine. Yeah, I guess Beck gives himself advice, and he's like, "What?" I'm sure that's probably been done somewhere.
So it's funny because you brought this up last time, and this really is turning into just a conversation about anything.
Yeah, sorry.
But probably like I would say maybe 25 or 30 years ago, you and I started working on a story, and we got a little bit into it, and I want to reopen that because you brought it up last time. I do want to reopen that. I still have it. You know what I mean?
I have it too.
Do you have it? I have. I mean, I've got all the original stuff that we did.
Yeah.
In a folder. So
yeah, I think I still have it electronically.
it's probably garbage.
It probably is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We so for the listener's sake, Tony and I started writing a story, and the idea was that each guy would write. So the first guy would write the first paragraph, and then send it to this guy too, and then I would write the second paragraph and send it back to Tony. He'd write the third paragraph, and so we would basically not know what the other guy was going to write, and then all of a sudden, you would get it back from the other guy, and there was this crazy plot twist or something, this turn,
Right.
And then, so we're just kind of messing around with it.
We were screwing with each other too.
Yeah, but it
got to the point where it
it's
wasn't
probably terrible, but
it wasn't we realized the paragraph wouldn't work, and it ended up being like
we ended up doing a
pages and
page
chapters
or something,
and things like that. So
but
so there's probably like maybe 40 or so pages
yeah.
of it. I don't know. I have to go back and
I
look.
don't know. There's just probably a kernel of decency in the midst of it somewhere.
It's an interesting story, but it's all handwritten though. Most of it's handwritten or
Oh, you must have handwritten that, wasn't it?
or typed. I have to go back and look.
Yeah, I think it was typed.
I got it. I have it.
Yeah.
So
anyways, yeah. So okay, back to the advice thing. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that I don't want to give myself advice that would again move me off in a completely different direction.
Right.
But I
so how about this? Let's make it a little more open, because that's
Okay.
like regardless of what effect that may or may not have.
Yeah, let's assume that we can end up kind of back here.
Yeah, back where we end up.
Yeah. But I wouldn't. I would tell myself not to be so fucking lazy.
Good luck with that.
Whatever. I mean,
I tell you what, Tony is one of the laziest people I know, but he's also the most self-aware because he knows he's lazy. And he's like, I don't know how many times you and I've called you on the phone, or you've called me or whatever. So like, what are you up to? It's just fucking lazy. Yeah. I'm just doing shit.
Well,
So I was like, yep. Well, I'm the exact same way. I just won't admit it to myself. I was like,
well,
no.
I wouldn't say. I mean, I'm not the laziest person. You know what I mean?
Not at all. And I think part of that is just you're harder on yourself because you know what you're capable of.
Yes, I think that's a big chunk of it. I mean, I like to not. I like to, I don't want to overexert.
Yeah.
But
again, so here, this is again for the listeners that may not know Tony. He calls himself lazy, and he's got a doctor's degree, and gets up every day at 5:00. And so lazy is not the term lazy in this circumstance is not sleeping until 9 and eating bonbons and watching TV.
Yeah, I mean, I ride my bike, I do that kind of stuff, but I definitely I have I have a presentation I have to do in about I don't know, probably like 3 or 4
6
months.
hours.
No, like 3 or 4 months. And the first draft of that presentation is due like at the end of this week, and I haven't started it yet.
Right.
And it's not. I just don't feel. And
it's because you're confident in your capabilities to get it done in no time.
You know what? Thank you for that, because that does make me feel good. No,
right.
I'll have to meet somebody in 2 days to talk about it. I haven't even touched it yet. And it's an international presentation too, so I'm kind of like, shit, I should actually work on this crap. But yeah,
I'll tell you what the cadets used to say when I was on the Eagle. The cadets used to say, well, I was a chief on there, and say, hey, you studying for your test coming up or whatever? They had all kinds of tests they had to do on board. I'm like, hey, chief, if you wait to the last minute, it only takes a minute.
Yeah,
I'm like,
well,
okay.
On that note, there's 2 things. Remember the other day, a couple podcasts ago, and I don't have my phone on me. Shit. Maybe I'll get it next time. I mentioned there was a theory where people bullshit a lot. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm,
Like, and
I remember that.
Yeah, and so I was. They people have a tendency to bullshit each other, and I was actually meeting with one of my friends. We're working on another paper together, and I brought that up to her, and she was like, "Oh yeah, that's blah blah blah," and I was like, "Fuck!" And she
just knew it right off.
Oh yeah, I googled it, and she was dead on. And it's funny because I said I go, "That's it," and she goes, "Well, I think what you kind of described is at least the beginning of that," and I'm thinking, "No, that is it. That is exactly what I'm saying."
Right.
And it's not so much a theory as like maybe a theory is okay, but somebody
like
wrote
a viewpoint or something.
Yeah, like there was it's like kind of this positional thing where people lie about their knowledge,
Right.
In certain theories and just basically hard sell it.
I've always tended to go the other way. I've always tended to not do that.
Well,
I've always tended to go like downplay it.
I think everybody has kind of like there is this tendency to like you may say, oh yeah, I like we can talk about cars, for example, and I have certain knowledge of cars, and you might say, oh yeah, do you know the 1958 Edsel blah blah blah, yeah. But I don't. Okay,
Right.
I know there was a car named there was an Edsel,
Right.
but other than the fact that I can maybe, but I might
Somehow Ford was involved, and that's all you know.
all I really know. But
Yeah.
we might, but that's kind of a bad example off the top of my head. But
Yeah, no, I get you. I know what you're saying.
but I really I do sometimes feel like I need to quantify and say, well, before we get too much further, I think I've actually done it a couple times on the podcast where you bring something up and I'll say, oh yeah, and then I realize no, I don't know at all.
Yeah, wait
what
a
that
minute,
is. Yeah, and but yeah, there was another thing that.
So the advice you'd give yourself is learn to stay on topic when you're doing podcasts. Because
No,
we're
well,
like now on topic 4.
I was going to say, I know two things. I know. It's not so much being lazy, but not to procrastinate so much. But because I don't feel like lazy is kind of tough. But
Yeah.
And I do know people that are like, God, man, I just recently that conference I just recently went to. There's people that I know there that are like such movers and shakers within my
Right.
profession, and they do so much. And I'm like, and they get awards and all that kind of stuff. I don't do any of that crap. Well, and also like honestly, I could be right now working on I could be working on a publication, or I could be doing a podcast with you, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing, though, right? And this is that ever rotating circle of logic that you can use when it comes to procrastination. Is like, what's more valuable to you as a human, as a person? Not
Right.
this is valuable as a human being. You need stuff like this in your life that you enjoy doing. It's also important that you feed your family, so you got to do the other stuff too. Right. So where do you prioritize and all that stuff?
Well, let me get this one thought out before
we go to another topic.
Turns to vapor.
Yeah.
But we're going to get back on that whole how much time you have in a day to get something done. But there's another theory that basically states, and I'm butchering it, but however much time you have to get something done is exactly how much time it takes to get that done.
Right.
Okay. And so
that's
like
hippie philosophy.
No, but it does fit.
Understand.
I mean because like I got to get that presentation done. I'm going to meet with somebody in 2 days to get it done. Tomorrow I'll work on it. I'll get it done.
Right.
Or if I started it that morning before I met with that person, I would still get something done. There may be slight differences in quality, but there won't be significant.
Right.
I will get it done. But the other thing is like you'll see. I remember I was watching American Idol, and there was the guy Randy, and they were talking about how creative he was and how every day he just creates. He's a very creative, right? Such a creative guy. He's so creative. But the truth is that he does not have any distractions in his life. He is not cooking his meals. He's not cleaning his bathroom. He's not ironing his clothes. He's not putting his clothes in the washer. He's not having to take his car to have it inspected or do it. All he does is, ride, get in the back of a limousine, ride someplace and all that kind of stuff. His brain is constantly unoccupied with the freaking... the bullshit,
the minutia of life,
of life, exactly.
Yeah.
And so if your whole life is, if all your distractions are removed and all you have to do is quotations create, then good for you.
Yeah, still not easy, but it's easier.
I think you could get someplace.
Yeah, it's just funny because you mentioned that, and I am slowly developing a reputation at work of being the person who can juggle all kinds of different stuff.
Sure.
Right.
That makes sense. You've always been that way.
Yeah. And then what I try to explain to somebody I was just talking to at work is like, I have always been that way, but I actually enjoy that part. I like many irons in the fire, and I like to try to pay attention to all of it. Every once in a while, I definitely drop something.
Every once in a while.
Yeah. Every once in a while I do. I mean, it's human, right? But then at the other side of it is that I like the, I don't know, controlled chaos, maybe, right? It is chaotic, but I like to be able to manage all of it. And I think we've never once talked about this, but I think that's one of the things that Elzette and I have in common, because she is the same way. I mean, we were talking a few minutes ago about people overstating their knowledge, and I tend to do the opposite, to understate, and she's way more understated than me. I mean, she is amazing when it comes to organizing, planning, detailed stuff that I mean, if millionaires and billionaires hire people to be their personal assistants to do the detail stuff, she would fit that bill like that. If anyone actually knew what she's capable of, they would try to snatch her and get her for those jobs. But she, she's so understated, man. She doesn't talk about that. I mean, she'll just tell you, oh yeah, I like to organize stuff. But I mean, I'm not kidding, man. But like multiple complex things. She just got done organizing the team, the over 60s team for the World Cup in South Africa, and got the ladies all on safari and had their meals organized and all that stuff. And she comes back and she goes, I don't know. Do you think I should try to run the World Cup in next time it comes here and whatever in the U.S.? I'm like, oh, hell yeah. Of course you should, you know? And then so, anyway, it gets long, of course, all these conversations get long, but do the best you can do at whatever it is, you know? The harder, the better, because the challenge is where the value is in life. So advice to myself, don't be as scared to do the hard shit.
Yeah, I mean, and also to your point about the enjoyment is in the challenge.
Yeah, to some degree, but I think a little more nuanced and probably more powerful. So the more you nuance it, it's like this is a shitty analogy, but it's like when you get condensed soup. You know, there's lots and lots of flavor, right? Or you reduce a sauce down or whatever. I think it's like that. The more nuanced you get, the more powerful it gets. So more than just the value is in the challenge. The value is in after the challenge, moving on to another challenge, like you know what I mean. So just because the challenge is over, does like you got your doctorates, that's it, you're done. You don't have to do anything else. No way, dude. You got all kinds of stuff you still want to do. Right?
Oh, I know.
So compound it. Yeah.
Yes, it immediately pivots to something else.
Yeah,
you know, so.
Exactly. So, but I think that's why like our grandparents, you know, they would retire and sit on the couch and watch football. And they'd die 5 years later because they got nothing to do, man.
Well, I mean, that we talked about my own personal experience with that kind of stuff. Yeah, as soon as you become sedentary, you know, and we talk about that with music. I mean, that it's one. Even though I kind of don't like to do it when I'm sitting there looking through new songs and new releases, I'm thinking, well, at least I'm activating some some neurons. Yeah,
and if you do discover something in the midst of that process, it's a little bit more valuable.
Yeah, and usually I will. I got one I should recommend. It was excellent, but we'll get around to that maybe a little later. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of anything else. The big thing, I mean, without diverting myself off of like, I still want to be where I am. You know, I think I probably would have wanted to, you know, be a little bit more academically robust and.
Shut up! You're one of the most academic people I know.
I know now, but when I was like in high school, it was nothing but bong resin ops.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, so I guess it all worked out. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I was going to say earlier, you said something that struck a chord with me, and that is that, you know, high school was, man, I hated high school. And it was probably the social aspect because I was, you know, 6'2" and 140 pounds, you know, as a toothpick. I wasn't an athlete or any of that kind of stuff. It wasn't cool or anything. But, damn, that just pivoted big time when I went to the Coast Guard. I don't know what happened. Right. Maybe it was boot camp. Maybe there was some weird psychological transformation or something. But ever since I got in the Coast Guard, I've just been at the top of my class at everything I do.
Right.
Everything.
I don't know. Yeah.
And I don't know what that change was because that damn sure wasn't like that in high school. I had to go to freaking summer school to graduate.
Oh man, I got to tell you, talk about high school. That's the thing is, we talk about going back and giving yourself advice, and because this has been kind of on the list. Yeah, you're right. I mean, probably I don't give too much of a shit about my scores and grades in high school. There was courses and we can easily say, well, I took like geometry and I failed geometry and all that kind of stuff. But does it matter? Do you need geometry and all that kind of stuff? I am in my 50s. where I am right now is where this is the path that's going to lead out when I retire and all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't. I don't need any extra knowledge. I would like to learn a foreign language, like we talked earlier. I'd like to learn how to play the guitar, but all that geometry and trigonometry or whatever I didn't learn, physics, doesn't matter now, right? And I thought about us like unpeeling the whole, like how much, like, and you may, I think our experiences were probably different. I like the fact that we did like the 70s podcast, because I think our experiences as pre-high school kids and all that kind of stuff is very similar. You mentioned you hated high school. I hated high school so much. So part of me is like, but a lot of that stuff I have like stuffed down. I don't want to deal with it. It's gone now. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes I still to this day will occasionally have situations where I'll think about like I'll even tell a story, like about how much I freaking hated high school. And again, God, I don't know if this came. No, this is a bad story, by the way.
Okay.
So for what it's worth,
fair warning.
Yeah, fair warning for anybody listening to me. This is not funny.
This is Editing Tony, and I'm going to jump in and interrupt Storytelling Tony just for a moment to explain. I'm editing this probably about 6 weeks after it was recorded, I think, give or take, and during the recording, both Doug and I, as mentioned several times in this podcast and earlier podcasts, we were loaded up on brisket. I had brisket brain pretty good. And while I think this is a good story, it is not one I really want to share with everybody. Nothing bad, nothing like that. Maybe someday I will share it. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and clip it out and pick right back up where we left off after the story.
That was my high school. You know what I mean? That was like, but okay. So if I had to go back and give myself advice, I would probably tell myself, don't take it so seriously, bro.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not as bad as you're making it out to be.
Right.
You know what I mean? You really are making this out to be a lot more than it is.
Right.
I mean, you're not getting bullied as much as you think you are.
Yeah.
You're the fact that you have so much anxiety about getting up in the morning and going to class. It's just not that big of a deal.
Right.
But I think,
once again, would you listen to yourself? Because
probably not.
That your reactions to those things are in real time.
Yes.
So the anxiety happens because of your previous day's experience and all that stuff.
It's such an interesting question, because I think if like just some random Tony from like 2022 came to me and I didn't know who the hell it was and was like, hey, bro, don't worry so much about high school. It's not a big deal. I'd be like, fuck off. But if
you're from the future.
But if I knew that was coming down from, look, I clearly have walked a mile in your shoes, if not 40 years or whatever in your shoes.
Let's pose this question. So once again, for the audience, Tony posed hey, what advice would you give yourself? And I struggled with this one. I did.
Yeah.
And the same with the Gone But Not Forgotten episode. And I'll tell you the reason that I struggled is because I really almost never look backwards in my life. Like, I reflect, of course, but I am very much a forward-looking person. So I would say this: let's take this topic that we really failed to stay on, and let's flip it. And let's say, if you could go forward 10 or 12 years or 20 years, what would you ask yourself? That's a harder question. So we can do that for another podcast.
It's hard only because of where we are. I mean,
right.
I feel like
you feel comfortable now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like life is okay. Yeah, I mean, there's things. Life has stupid, frustrations that really don't add up to much.
Yeah.
And
but so I'm gonna just drop that out there, and we may or may not address that in a future podcast. But if you could go forward and ask yourself something, what would it be?
Okay, it's interesting.
Wow, that's the reverse take on that question.
Yeah, but I think if I were to summarize, though, I'd probably, I would not want to change my current trajectory.
Okay. Yeah.
But probably, I would tell myself, maybe get outside your head a little bit, and
that's good advice for anyone, though, right?
It is. Yeah. Kind of focus your critical thinking skills a little bit. Maybe that's about it, really. Because I and what is interesting is I can occasionally look back think back 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and how I thought and how I moved through life, and I do think and I don't know when it's going to change, because as you get older, the think meat doesn't work quite as well as it used to,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I do think I think I'm able to approach problems with a little bit more, a little bit more mental.
Yeah, well, you got more data.
Yeah, or just my critical thinking skills I think are sharpened a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So that's interesting. We'll come back around to that.
See if we can tackle that
Yeah.
one at some point.
And
I don't know the answers. I mean, I have to think about it.
Yeah.
But I just thought about, let's flip it 180 and see what happens.
Okay? So from there we are at 40. God, this one went longer than we thought.
Yeah.
So do you have any?
Well, I would say if you take out, the Private Ryan and all the other conversations, we're probably at 10 minutes on topic.
I think it was good though.
Whatever.
I think it was good.
It's
So,
fine.
but no, actually, this one was interesting. It wasn't as funny as our past ones, but definitely talking about some pretty deep stuff, and I like that.
Yes.
Do you have any recommendations?
No.
None?
It's all no.
It's brisket brain.
No, it's not that as much. It's that my life right now is centered around home improvement. So,
So what kind of home improvement recommendations would you make?
jeez.
You said Lowe's and Home Depot has awesome tile.
Sort of.
Yeah, I tell you one that I'll make. Okay. Is again, I'm a YouTube junkie. I ran across this really cool YouTube channel recently. They probably posted about, I want to say, maybe 30 or 40 videos that I found it. It's called and I think at one time this was actually maybe something that was on the Sci-Fi Network or Discovery, but it's called the Y Files, like X Files, but rather than X, it's Y, and it's actually spelled WHY, the Y Files.
Okay.
And it's and their description, the Y Files is a channel for people who are fascinated or obsessed with science, science fiction, bizarre history, weird facts, strange spaces or places, conspiracies, and unusual people. So join us as we learn about the mysteries of the universe and have a few laughs along the way. It's hosted by this guy named AJ. His actual name is Andrew Gentile, and he has a sidekick, which is a fish, a CGI fish, named Hecklefish. And all Hecklefish does is, clearly the fish has got an over the top hatred for the government, and is a full on conspiracy theorist.
Okay.
So the fish will chime in throughout the podcast just briefly and make
protagonist style.
Yeah, make jokes. But it's pretty well researched. Usually, like if he does like a conspiracy or something like that, he'll give it kind of like what you might expect from the conspiracy. Like the moon landing never happened or something, and then he'll give you the pragmatic or the objective information, so that way you can. Usually he'll either debunk it or allow you to formulate your own opinion. But very well researched, the Y Files. The guy's actually, he's obviously somebody who's been around TV. This AJ, and
it's polished pretty well.
Yeah, very much. And
was he not the same? No, I can't remember that guy's name that was on the. What was that one with Adam? Never mind.
Yeah, I know this guy's been on Joe Rogan a couple times.
Okay, yeah,
so,
that's not what I was thinking of. But
yeah.
I actually do have a recommendation, and
Rock on.
This is probably going to be lame for most, but in case you haven't heard of, if you haven't heard of this, then you seriously need to read more. But but if you haven't been following the James Webb Telescope,
oh yeah.
You need to go to NASA.com. Now there's a million articles that people just take the photographs from NASA and write an article. So New York Times or Newsweek or whoever, they're taking the photographs from NASA because it's a public entity. So we own the photos as the general public. So go to NASA.com under programs and look up the James Webb Telescope and look at the photographs that thing is taking. I was going to say astronomical, but I realized how stupid that sounded.
And totally spacey.
Yeah, it's so spaced out. Yeah. But the Pillars of Creation, where there was a photo 2-3 days ago that was put out, and they did a side-by-side comparison from the Hubble to this thing, and it is unbelievable the amount of detail that it's getting.
Really?
And you could see, so they call that the Pillar of Creation because that's where they call it the nursery of the stars. Yeah. So the stars are born, and you can literally see in this new photograph the red energy that's coming out of this thing to create stars. I don't know where the energy is coming from, but it is super, super, super cool. And of course, scientists love it because that much more detail gives them that much more information. For me, I'm just looking at it from the standpoint. It's like, oh my God, that looks amazing.
Well, you mentioned the Pillars of Creation. I went to a star party at the Fort Davis Observatory, and probably the one. I mean, all of it was fascinating because they had multiple telescopes lined up,
right.
But they did have one telescope pointed there.
Yeah,
and I'm sure from the planet, resolution wasn't. But I remember that being the one thing I looked at where I was like. Wow! It was like
it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Look that up, dude. Look up the James Webb Pillars of Creation, and it was only published a couple days ago. Yeah, and it is just like amazing.
Yes, I will. I would definitely will because again at the star party, which was very cool. I remember like the big observatory they had pointed at like Jupiter, and they're like, hey, you want to look at Jupiter? And I'm thinking, yes, and I remember going up there thinking, it was going to be like that thing you saw from like Voyager, like the gigantic, and with a big red spot, and it was about the size of my thumbnail, holding my arm at like arm's length, on my thumb at arm's length. It was a little tiny thing. I was kind of like, that's kind of cool. I mean, I've seen Jupiter, but and there was all kinds of things that were like that, where there was, that's Andromeda, and you're like, well, it looks like
underwhelming,
like a smudge.
Yeah.
And then I remember, I don't know what it was, but they had that telescope pointed at that star nursery, and even though it was, looking through a telescope with one eye, there was just a depth to it, and it was probably the only thing I looked at, which I enjoyed the whole thing, but the only thing I looked at that gave me kind of chills,
right?
Like that gave me goosebumps.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, check out that news picture. It's amazing.
Will do.
Yep.
All right.
Cool.
Okay. Well, that was a total digression.
Yes.
And also
that was almost a hodgepodge, wasn't it?
It was pretty close to it. And also, I think most people are going to listen to this and be like, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
But
click.
If you do, you're welcome. I thought I liked it.
Okay.
That was a. Honestly, neither one of us are high right now.
I know, but that's the problem.
But there was a little bit of that.
We're high on brisket.
Man, it had a little bit of that. Like, are those guys stoned kind of conversation? Right. That was kind of awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you again for listening.
See you next time.
You have a good one. Bye. This has been an Analog Spectrum production and presentation. As always, Doug and I really appreciate you taking a break from your crazy-ass life and listening to us shoot the breeze for an hour or so. It really means a ton to both of us. With every episode, we're growing slow and steady, and there's no shortage of crazy, ridiculous stuff for us to talk about. But with that said, we're always looking for new ideas in a different direction. So if you have a show suggestion, or hell, if you have a fascinating story you want to tell, send us an email at analogspectrum, and that's all one word, at gmail.com. And maybe we'll talk about what you want to hear. Or better yet, maybe you can be a guest on the world's fastest growing podcast that happens to be hosted by two 50-something-year-old guys talking about mindless idiocy. As I've stressed in the past, we have a website. You can find the link in the show's description. Check it out. I can pretty much guarantee that you'll find something that interests you from one of our previous posts. Even more essential, please follow us. We're on all the major platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Once subscribed, you'll get a heads up about our weekly uploads. Finally, for any cast you've enjoyed, please leave a comment. I read them all. And leave a 5-star review. And if you're thinking about leaving something less than 5 stars, I'll just go ahead and say it. That's pretty messed up. But hey, that's fine. You gotta do what you gotta do. Oh, and you can do us one other favor. Share our show with like friends, family, enemies, and maybe that random stranger on the subway that had that crazy ass look in his eyes. Sharing makes us grow. And the bigger our Analog Spectrum community gets, the better our shows will be. Okay, that last part's not necessarily true, but sharing is caring or some such nonsense. As always, thanks for joining us on this ride, and we look forward to sharing more Analog Spectrum awesomeness with you soon.